This is Brandon Ramsby, and I'm working on my CCS 300 signature assignment, which is the video photo reflection that we were assigned after the completion of our CCE trip. So without further ado, I will be elaborating on my reflection on the project with a lot of fun pictures that don't really represent what I'm talking about, but they were pictures taken while on the trip, so I hope you enjoy this. I figured I'd just start with a general overview of the trip and what we were required to do. So, just in general, we're required to go on a cross-cultural experience through Carroll University to get ourselves exposed to other cultures. So for my cross-cultural experience, I chose to do the Border Towns, which was a 5-day trip down to Tucson, Arizona, where we were going to deal with some of the local people and people in the area about the immigration issue. We were also supposed to go across the border into Mexico, but due to some unforeseen circumstances of a student not being able to cross the border, we were unable to do so. So basically, what happened is we went down to Tucson and spoke with a lot of individuals regarding the immigration issue and saw a lot of different perspectives on the immigration issue from those individuals. So that's what the trip was and why I chose to do it. Basically, why I went on it. All right, now the next thing that I'm going to be talking about is my initial viewpoints about immigration and how they potentially changed from the class experience. So, without getting into too much detail and really just boring everyone to death right now, my initial viewpoints, generally speaking, were that of the right-wing conservative. So, generally speaking, I wanted to have a secure border, not have an open border, so obviously that's the difference. Really focus on who's coming in, documentation, figure out just where everyone's going and really have it be a structured process to eliminate the possibility of undocumented people coming across or having potentially violent or drugs or something like that coming across. So just having a secure border, generally speaking. Obviously, immigration is a good thing, and you need to have immigration in any country to have it be successful, to be diverse, to different viewpoints, things like that. But just having it be structured and limited so that not just the floodgates are open and having an open border, zero regulation, something I definitely don't believe in. So that is my initial viewpoint on what the border should be like and how immigration should generally be handled. So how they changed from the class experience was I was actually galvanized by the experience. So I was actually pushed farther right after being on the trip due to the fact that I was able to realize how passionate I was in the opposite point of view than what we were hearing most of the time from the people that were there. And a lot of these things were just part of the thing that really hit me was having maybe just a total wall across. That way you would be able to prevent the amount of deaths, because that was one of the large things we looked at, was just the total amount of deaths of people trying to cross through the desert. So if we prevented people from being able to cross through the desert, we'd be saving those lives and controlling the number of people coming across and things of that nature. So really, I was just strengthened in the fact that I think this is really what I believe, and this is what I think it should be, and I think that that's definitely the smartest thing to do for our country really as a whole. Alright, next I'm going to be talking about what I learned from the immersion experience about immigration. So, after having just explained that I had a right-wing perspective on the matter, I still wanted to come down here with an open mind and really learn the other side of the issue, because I knew I was going to be getting more of a liberal, more of a pro-immigration side of the view, which is always good. You want to, no matter what side of the argument you're on, you're going to want to be educated on both sides of the argument. So I was going to look at this as an experience to get a lot of information about the other side of the argument that I wasn't currently exposed to it as much. So a lot of things I learned about immigration from the experts that we spoke with. So the author Todd Miller, he had a lot of Border Patrol experience, and those were open. My eyes were open to a lot of the things that he said in regards to the monetary cost of controlling the border and the different things that went along with that. Another one of the things that I learned that I think was very fascinating was the student experience, because previously I didn't know that students who were undocumented could actually go to college. So after talking to Daria, we were exposed to, yes, they can still go to college, they just have to pay a lot more. So that was something that was interesting to me. And then just a lot of the legal things, because we went to Operation Streamline and talked to Isabel Garcia, and she was able to expose some of the more intricate things in the legal process and they're processed with a misdemeanor rather than a felony because they plea out through Operation Streamline, whereas if they're charged with a felony, they can get up to 18 years. But through the misdemeanor, they can only get up to 180 days of deportation and things like that. So those were a lot of the things I learned that I didn't know and was able to experience some of the opposite side of the argument. So that's always a good thing in that you have an argument that you're being part of. If you don't understand the other side of the argument, you're really not going to have a strong argument in the first place. So I enjoyed getting that experience from those people. Alright, so now after talking about what my initial point of views were for the CCE, what I learned on the CCE, and really kind of what I grasped from the CCE, as previously mentioned, in that, you know, I was just galvanized by the experience, but I really appreciated the fact that I was able to understand the other argument's point of view on the matter. We're going to kind of change direction and go into culture a little bit. So obviously that's one of the big things that Carroll's preaching through their new system of education, is that everyone needs to get a cultural experience, cultural life, you know, experience, so they're able to work with other people and be more diverse in the workplace and things like that. So after saying that, we're going to go into what my definition of culture is, and I could easily open a textbook and just, you know, read off a definition. I'm going to go off the top of my head on this one and just give you generally what I'm feeling. So the definition of culture is one's collective experiences, what they've been taught, their customs, their traditions, the food they eat, the way that they act, very universal ideas of what a person believes, what they think, what they're exposed to. So that's their individual customs, or culture, I'm sorry. So that's opposed to what their societal influences are, so it's a little bit different, but then society does have a large impact on what you think, believe, feel, do, things like that. So there are a couple things that don't cross over between, you know, societal pressures and what you do because of the society you live in and because of the culture that you have. And some of those examples would be people in America, for instance, that still hold to their traditional beliefs, traditional customs, while still having the same societal influences that, say, someone like me would have. So, for instance, in my CCS 100, you know, signature assignment, we talked about what our own culture is and what we think our own culture is. You know, I wrote a lot about the fact that I have just an American culture. I'm not, you know, deep in heritage, things like that. I'm just, you know, straight American through and through, that I don't have outlying perspectives that change my beliefs and things like that every day of the week. So I was almost arguing that I was basically just influenced by the society that I live in, because I don't have a ton of cultural heritage, let's say. But someone, you know, that immigrates to America after the fact, you get any sort of descent from other countries, they're going to bring with them a lot of different cultural experiences, ideas, values, things like that. So, long story short, definition of culture to me is just an individual's collective beliefs, way of doing things, because that's just who they are. So that's a lot about culture too, opposed to the societal pressures that just bring with it where you are. But you can bring culture over to a different society and still have those values. So that's the difference too, as we'll expand into that a little bit. Alright, so the next point that I'm going to be talking about is related to the last point about what is culture. So, the next point about that I'm going to be speaking is, why does culture matter, and what did I experience on the trip that really showed me the importance of culture? So this one's a bit tougher just due to the different trip that we went on. So our trip was more of a single issue topic, and that individuals' cultures weren't really discussed a ton, opposed to just how they have to live their lives according to the way the laws are set up and the problems that they face in their home country. So then they're forced to come here due to, you know, refuge for money or different dangerous situations that they're living in. So I wouldn't really say that that's their culture, and if you ask them, they probably wouldn't say, oh, my culture is that I'm, you know, an undocumented worker and I had to leave Mexico. Well, no, their culture is going to be, you know, Mexican, I'm Chicano, I'm, you know, whatever their different culture is, and that's going to explain their customs. So in this trip, we didn't really go a ton into the culture of the individuals in the area, but we did talk about why they need to have, like, their traditional land kind of thing. So we talked about the natives in the area that weren't from Spanish descent from the area, where they felt pushed out, and the different borders that were arbitrarily drawn really infringed upon their land, and we moved them and things like that. So they wanted to really get back to where they were traditionally from because that's where their cultural roots were and their heritage. So that is something that we did talk about on this trip, even though there wasn't a ton on actual like individuals' culture in the area, more of like how they have to live their lives according to the hardship that they face, which I know one could argue is culture, but based on the definition of culture that I gave earlier, that's not so much the case. So it's important to understand, where one comes from, but then coming from the point of view of where I'm at, you're going to have to adapt and adjust. You can't just sit there and expect the world to understand that this is where you traditionally lived. But that's just my take on the matter. So, you've got to adjust and whatnot. But that is the cultural piece that we did get from it. So traditional land, traditional living areas where they wanted to be, the traditional language, things like that. So that really doesn't hit the question, so I'm going to rephrase one more time. So the importance of culture, the importance of knowing who you are, where you came from, and those individuals that we did speak with, a lot of them did talk about, the traditional land, and they understood that was where they came from. And despite the fact that they wanted to stay there, keep that land, that's another topic, but it did show that they care. So caring about your culture is important, and that's something that we did learn from them. Alright, now this is going to be my final piece for the video. So after saying everything I've said about the CCE, the trip, my initial perspective, the perspective that changed and that it became stronger than my idea of culture, and then the cultural aspects that we did get from the trip, I'm going to wrap it up into a conclusion on how this appreciation of ideas opposed to more so culture. So we didn't get the huge culture experience as we did just people's ideas on the matter and their firsthand experiences is more so what we got. How it's going to impact me in the future. So the obvious first answer is how it's going to impact me in the future. I'm going to take all this information that I've learned and obviously just think critically about the matter in things like elections, votings, listening to experts, quote unquote. You can't see my fingers, but that was experts with quotes around it. People debating the matter and just thinking that, okay, do they actually know what it's like there? Do they not know what it's like there? Are they just totally speaking out of, pure ignorance on the matter and hoping to get votes? So the critical thinking on the matter is definitely going to be impacted. Secondly, going into the Air Force as an Air Force officer, I'm going to have to deal with diversity and a lot of different cultures and different perspectives, and people are bringing in their own baggage, so to speak, into the working place. Just think of it like that, the working world. You have to be able to appreciate, understand, and work around and work with people on their different perspectives, matters, opinions, things like that. So just getting a different exposure to different culture, to different people's ideas, you're able to better work with individuals on the matter. So even if you completely disagree with someone on something that's being said, you can work around that, work with them, and just because you disagree doesn't mean you can't work together. So this was an opportunity to practice something like that and get exposed to working with people with different point of views. For me, at least, as I previously mentioned. So it's always a good experience to work with that and learn how to handle delicate topics in a business professional sense. So, in saying that, that's going to wrap up my presentation. So I just wanted to send a few shout-outs. So thank you, Professor Jenny Huck, for taking us on the trip and experiencing that with us. I know that you did volunteer for this trip, but obviously you chose this one for a reason. I know you had some things you were fighting with, just like we all were, everyone that went on the trip. So thank you for your time. I want to thank Linda for all the pictures that she took. I did make some funny faces in a lot of group pictures that she took, I'll admit that. Next, I want to thank all of the people who went on the CCE trip with me for making it a great experience. Obviously, getting forced into something like that, no one, you go in with a negative attitude, and so did a lot of the other students. But then just, having that bonding experience, learning, growing together, getting all touchy and feely, as I'll say, really did make the trip worthwhile and a good experience. So yep, I think that's everybody. No one gets an individual mention. And then I want to lastly thank Mr. Corey Hart for experiencing or making a great song and telling me that I should wear my sunglasses at night. So thank you, and that is all.